Now, what can a person with a disability do to protect themselves? And this comes from a source of domestic violence against people with disabilities, the untold story. With our PowerPoint, we're going to put this up online, and all these resources will be made available to you. And we've made sure to put the connections to the articles, to the statistics in our PowerPoint. Having a network of personal care attendants instead of relying on one or two paid professional care attendants or relatives to provide these services, this is important. Being connected with an association of personal care attendants. There are different ways to go about this. Oftentimes family members are care attendants, and sometimes a person with a disability may pay one person to be their care attendant. If that care attendant is needed more than 8 hours, though, you really need a system of care attendants. And also, I've found that this helps that if a case where mistreatment occurs, another person's going to notice that. Having a reliable emergency backup care attendant service. This is very important. I think when you see different environmental conditions, such as ice storms, it's hard to get people from one point to another. So there's a lot in the Cleveland area. I worked with a student who, we had a snowstorm. We got 110 inches of snow in a year. You're going to have situations that come up. And 2 care attendants, they had to back up, but they're located on the other side of Cleveland. We're in Akron. And so it definitely proves itself as a need. Being aware of accessible shelter services in your area, very important. In Manhattan, I believe we've got a new shelter going up right now, or actually it's open actually, if I remember correctly, relatively soon. And also learning effective strategies for hiring, retaining, and firing staff. It's good for a person with a disability to know the law. The law is there to protect people, and it's good to know that. And also letting the people in your life know that you depend on their help and support. Again, open communication with people, having somebody there to talk with. Educating disability agencies about domestic violence and domestic violence agencies about disability issues. Kind of what we're doing here is informing people of those issues, but also in working with those areas. Know that you have the right to make the decision about what you do and don't want to happen to you. I think this is very important. It comes again to communication, but also again to that myth that a person with a disability is unable to make those choices for themselves. And I think it's important to give people all of the information possible to make a knowledgeable decision. Of course, nonviolent actions. Regards here, talking about people with disabilities, but I think this goes in general. Mohandas Gandhi, a famous quote, "You must be the change you wish to see in the world." I think definitely, because I think it was Margaret Mead who said one person can make a change, and I think it's very important because one person's actions can be there for another person. I think to be aware of your surroundings is very important. Support disability rights and awareness. We do that a couple times on campus. We have K-State for All coming up in the spring semester, and to bring this awareness to everyone. Volunteering and support or crisis hotlines. We have some local hotlines I know of, and some support agencies that need help. Reporting suspected abuse. All too often, people see abuse and don't report it. I think this is talked a lot about. In fact, there have been studies about this, people who see something happen. Very important to bring that up and not to be afraid to call 911 in case of a situation. At least it's being looked into. And then using person-first language. We've got some resources if anybody wants any handouts in our office. And I believe we actually brought some with us. Yeah, and very important here, there's some great information out there. Language evolves over time, and unfortunately, there's a lot of language still out there that's been used in the early part of the century when it comes to a person with a disability. And notice we say person with a disability quite often. You'll still hear the people refer to a person as being handicapped, which we do see as kind of an archaic definition. Unfortunately, that has some bad history. And talking about a disabled person, focusing a lot on that person's disability. But what we really want to focus on here is that person. If the disability is a matter of importance to the conversation, talking about that, then secondary to that person. But it's important to be aware of how you talk with and about people with disabilities. And I think oftentimes you'll find that, do you even need to talk about the disability? You're talking about that person there in an academic setting and how you can help them out. But also, it's just very important. There's a long list of language, and there are a lot of things that are used. I think media misuses some of these terms quite often. There's some great guides out there to talking about this. We've got the Words with Dignity, which is that handout, and also creating a safety plan in order to talk about these ways you can help. And we've got a huge list of resources, and I believe we have a couple pages of this, if I remember right. A lot of these you'll see, the WHO, Centers for Disease Control, Violence Prevention. A lot of these are quite common. We have some Kansas specific areas, SRS, Kansas Disability Violence Awareness Project. Excuse me. A lot of resources out there, and this is just a small portion of how many resources actually exist. If you go online, there's an amazing amount of resources. And that is, in effect, kind of ways that you can help out and ways that you can work towards nonviolence in regards to people with disabilities. And at this time, we want to thank you for attending. And